Welcome back, Screenagers. It is time for yet another episode of the Canon, your favorite movie podcast, the only movie podcast providing you with a watch list of the most essential movies ever made. My name is Raf, and we've got another amazing episode lined up for you guys today. We are starting a very exciting little trilogy arc that we're going to be doing about one of the best movie trilogies of all time to close out season 4 of the Canon. We're going to be talking Lord of the Rings. And obviously today that means we will be starting with the Fellowship of the Rings, or the Fellowship of the Ring. I always add that S to it. It's so annoying. But to do so, to help me talk about this amazing movie, to start off this amazing trilogy, we have legendary Saw contributors. Two of your favorites, RJ and Bob, are back. RJ, Bob, how are you guys doing?
Good. You have my mic. Sorry.
And my headphones. No.
Yes.
I feel like maybe Rap says everybody's a legendary guest, and that's, but I'll take it.
Yeah, I think we all are.
I think it's true. I think everyone is a legend. Obviously, you guys are legendary in different ways, than Jacob or Duke or Sailor, Dahl, and Alvarez are, but or Ramona, but everyone's a legend. And I'm sorry if I, have enough love to spread to all of our amazing guests. I don't want to pit people against each other. I don't want us to choose favorites. I think everyone is amazing, and that's kind of the beauty of the show.
And it's the real reason why we are so happy that you're doing it, because holy crap, would we choose favorites?
Yes.
It's also good for me because then, because all of you guys are legends, that allows people to not get tired of me being the complete opposite of a legend.
Oh, yeah, no way.
Oh, well.
You're the legend of legends. Come on.
Yes. The true legend.
We're all legends. Funny that we're talking about legends, because I feel like this movie is, in a way, about legends and legendary people and the stories that we tell about said legends, within the world of the story, and also the legend of the way that this movie exists within our real world. I don't know if that's a stretch of a connection, but I kind of feel like it's true.
Sounds good.
So we obviously have a lot to get to with this movie, and we will, in the next 2 episodes also be talking about The Two Towers and Return of the King. So we are going to try our darndest to focus specifically on Fellowship of the Ring in this episode. Obviously we'll bleed into the other 2 movies a little bit, but because there is, so much to get to with this movie and everything around it, I feel like we should just sort of dive right into talking about this flick.
Sounds like a plan.
Is it our goal to make the podcast shorter than the movie? Just asking for a friend.
So we're going to do 2 cuts of this episode. We're going to do the regular version, and then we're going to do a 4-hour extended version.
Holy crap.
I love it.
And Tom Bombadil won't be in either.
Oh, damn it.
You know what? I quit. I'm done.
I'm out.
Oh, Tom Bombadil. We'll definitely talk more about Tom as we get into the rest of the conversation. But I think the obvious place to start here is because this movie sort of came out within all of our lifetimes. This was sort of a movie where, anticipation for this may have been one of the most, if not the most anticipated movie ever released. There was so much riding on this. There were so many people who were fans of the stories and the books sort of growing up and throughout, the entire second half of the 20th century. So I want to get a sense before we start talking about the movie of sort of where the two of you sit within where you were in terms of the anticipation around this movie. Were you guys fans of the books? Had you read all of the books leading up to this. Sort of walk me through all of that. And RJ, I kind of want to kick it over to you first for this one.
All right. So yes, I read The Hobbit in the 8th grade. I did a book report on it for English. And it was 8th grade, 9th grade, one of those. And then immediately jumped right into reading the Lord of the Rings trilogy. And let's see, I think I've maybe read it once or twice since then, but it's been years. But I loved it. So, when the movies came out, I was as Twitter pated as the next fantasy genre fan. I was, let's see, came out in 01. What time of year did they? So I was in 2001. It would have been like right after I graduated, I think.
It came out in December.
I know, because they were all December releases. Yeah. So it would have been. I was in my freshman year at college. So I have fond memories of going to see the Fellowship. I don't think I saw it on the opening night, but I was as soon as I could get to it. Mm-hmm. Get through the lines in Austin to go see it, and I think I've spent like 10 minutes not watching the trilogy since then. That's like most of my time, I think, over the years. I've tried to dedicate to just at least having it on in the background of my life, because why not?
I mean, I think we'll definitely talk more about it, but these might be like the ultimate background movies. Yeah. Awesome. So you were like fully in on this. You were pumped for it. Saw it as soon as you could when it was released.
Oh yeah.
That's awesome. Bob, what about you?
So my first experience with the Lord of the Rings actually was the Rankin and Bass cartoons from the 1970s. And they would show them occasionally on TV. And so I'd seen and loved The Hobbit, and seen and been confused by the Lord of the Rings cartoon. Although I do still remember the songs the orcs would sing. There's a whip, there's a way. So I didn't realize those were actually based on anything until I was like in 7th grade. And I happened to be in the school library, and I'm like looking at a bunch of books, and I see Lord of the Rings, and I'm like, the hell is this? So I grabbed that, went home and devoured that, read The Hobbit second, weirdly enough, and became a huge fan of it, of course, almost immediately. And then on a completely separate track, I became a fan of Peter Jackson in the early 90s from his gory horror movies. Mm-hmm. So Bad Taste, Dead Alive, aka Brain Dead, and Meet the Feebles were my experience of Peter Jackson. So when I first heard the director of Bad Taste is going to direct a Lord of the Rings movie, I slapped my hand on my forehead and went, oh my God, what are they thinking? This cannot be. This is a guy who has a movie in which someone shoots the top off a guy's head and then sits and eats the brain out of it with a spoon. That doesn't say Gandalf and the Fellowship to me. So I had concerns when it was being touted as the next big thing. I actually didn't even see it on opening weekend. I was so concerned about it, but everybody told me how great it was. So like that very next week I went to see it, and it was so amazing. And, I'm sure we'll talk about this too, but at the time that it came out, it was absolutely the perfect film to kind of ease my mind and troubles. And I fell in love with all of the characters, with Peter Jackson's version of Middle Earth. And like you guys, I've been kind of having it on in the background of my life ever since.
I love that. It is so interesting to think about. Like, I don't know how much discussion there was before the movie came out when it was announced that like this guy who directs like weirdo, gory, horror flicks is going to take on what has for the longest time been known as like the most unfilmable book ever.
Right.
And that's like a huge, huge, huge risk. And obviously we now know that it paid off because Peter Jackson is an amazing filmmaker and put like so much care into all of these movies. And it totally shines through. I also think it's super interesting what you mentioned about like this movie coming out at the perfect time to sort of like ease the mind of, you and probably a lot of other people based on what was sort of going on in the world right before its release, which is really, really, really interesting to think about. Just to throw in sort of like where I was before this movie in terms of anticipation and stuff, I am slightly younger than you guys. So I was in the 4th grade when this movie came out. And as a 4th grader, I obviously had not read any of the Lord of the Rings books at that point in my life. Didn't really have like them on my radar at all. And as you guys will remember, in 2001, the Harry Potter series also kicked off. So there was like, for me within like my peer group, so many people were like very, very, very excited for Harry Potter. And I was never a big Harry Potter guy. And I saw Fellowship of the Ring like either opening weekend or like very early during its release run. And I was like blown away. And I think I don't know if this like happened across the board, but within my school, people sort of fell into 2 camps where there were like all of like the Harry Potter kids. And then there were the kids who were like, no, we're cool and like edgy and we like Lord of the Rings. We're not into Harry Potter. That's kiddie stuff. We're like, we like the more hardcore fantasy. We're into Lord of the Rings. So I fell into that group and like immediately became someone who was like fully obsessed with this movie and, the full trilogy once the rest of them came out. But it is sort of interesting to hear sort of like all of the different approaches. Like RJ was big into the books. Bob, you were introduced through the weirdo animated films.
Yep.
So I feel like we all sort of like approached the movie from different points when we first came to it. And obviously I'll now have, I think, a similar appreciation for it. So RJ, when you finally did get around to going to see Fellowship of the Ring in theaters, what was your initial thought? Were you blown away? Were you like, this isn't true to the book? Was it like everything that you had hoped for a movie version of it to be? Like, what did you think when you first stepped out of the theater?
I my memory is terrible, so I couldn't say for certain what my exact first thought was, but if I had to guess, it would be, I want to do it again. And it's, there are those movies where you're like, I wish I could see that again for the first time. And I think every time I watch The Fellowship of the Ring, I still get that kind of thrill of just the majesty of it. It is so powerfully encompassing, I think, and especially if you're a big fan of the books already or just of the fantasy genre in general, which I am. But I did not find the discrepancies between the books and the movies to be anything that may, like, dampen the experience for me at all. I loved it from the very beginning to the end, and it was, and it still is every time I watch it. It is a wonderfully emotional ride, no matter how much I know exactly what's going to happen.
Yeah.
Oh
yeah.
Bob, how did you feel walking out of the theater?
Well, I think I kind of laid the groundwork for my expectations being pretty low when I went in, and it blew it away so much. I knew, our experience of fantasy films before Lord of the Rings is, of keeping our expectations low, of expecting more sword and sorcery because that's easier to shoot as a film.
Mm-hmm.
And we hadn't really seen epic fantasy in a way that was true to how at least it felt to me reading it. And everything about the Fellowship of the Ring was epic. I mean, shooting in New Zealand was such a genius move because everything felt heightened. I believed in the Shire. I believed in the Misty Mountains and in, Rivendell, and everything felt like it was true to the intent, if not the letter of the books. And, at that point, I already knew a lot about how films were made and how difficult it was to get some of this stuff. So it didn't bother me. Did I miss Tom Bombadil? Yes. But was he essential to the story? No, he's really not. and so the fact that it felt like Lord of the Rings, even if some of the details were different, was the most important thing to me.
Yeah. There is it really is hard to explain like the feel of this movie and how far that goes into what makes this film and the rest of the series, or the rest of the trilogy rather, so special, is that it really does capture a feel of fantasy in ways that, like to what you're saying, Bob, like we didn't really get before. 2001 was such an interesting year in cinema and also just like American history, obviously. But, from like 1999 with like The Matrix and Phantom Menace and stuff, we got this sense that cinematic like special effects had finally gotten us to a place where we could really expand on the kinds of stories that we were telling and like showing on screen. And it was really like the perfect opportunity for something like this to be made. And the fact that it was made so well and perfectly captures the like vibe and energy and feel and the magic, RJ, that you were talking about that it needs to, is so like we are so insanely blessed that everything sort of came together when it came together the way that it did.
Yeah.
We're kind of already here, so should we talk about the Tom Bombadil of it all? The elephant in the room, or the elephant not in the room, I guess.
Right. It's just representative of changes, right? I mean, it's the biggest element eliminated from the films, especially the extended version. But it's kind of representative of changes that Jackson made, whether they were, whether they were choices made for filming reasons or pacing reasons or whatever. There was always going to be a contingent of any fandom that was going to have problems when major elements are removed, whether they worked better for the film or not. So having Tom Bombadil, who's such a big character in the intro parts of the Fellowship of the Rings, was like the lightning rod for people to be upset about changes.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard for me to talk about it in any kind of meaningful way because I'm like, I don't care. Yeah, I almost miss the bits with them finding their swords in the tombs, the barrow mounds before that, just because I thought visually those would be cooler. But I'm like, Tom Bombadil's going to look kind of goofy on screen, isn't he? He's kind of silly.
Maybe the issue was they just couldn't find the right actor to play Tom Bombadil. I don't think anyone could pull off that role.
Right. And then in 2001, who are you going to get for that? Even to try, like today, it'd just be Jack Black, right? So that's who we'd be stuck with.
Man.
Yeah. What's that?
Well, now that's going to be in my head for the rest of
Oh,
life.
I'm so sorry.
Maybe we can do a spin-off movie just about the exploits of Tom Bombadil starring Jack Black. And it's like full, like he's like full Jack Black mode. Like maybe it's a musical and he's just doing like silly Jack Black songs as Tom Bombadil because Tom Bombadil does love to sing. So
that is $1 billion idea. Yeah, I'm with Bob. I didn't care that much. I was not a person who was outraged by the absence. I feel like it's, in the books it works, obviously, and it's charming. But I think on screen it would have been disruptive to the tone and pacing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm not a filmmaker, so. Maybe you could have done it and it would have been amazing, but maybe Peter Jackson just doesn't like the name Tom and he didn't want to put it in there. I don't know. But it's a great movie without Tom Bombadil, and I can't imagine it any other way.
Just from pacing wise, they go from escaping the riders at Buckleberry Ferry to Bree without that in between, so it keeps the tension. They're still on the run, whereas the whole thing with Tom Bombadil is kind of it would break the tension. I mean, they have breakfast with Goldberry and all. It
would have been a sort of like emotional lull or like too drastic of like a pullback from the tension that we are experiencing, and then it would be hard to sort of jump back into that tension. And I think with the rest of the movie, like obviously the pacing is great for this being a 3-hour movie, and there is sort of like the perfect balance of adventure, tension, both like dramatic or sort of like more thrilling tension, action, and sort of like all of that stuff. So again, like in order to make like a final cinematic product, I totally agree with both of you guys that like it was totally fine to omit that character. I just feel like it's always a funny bit of conversation to have about, how we feel about the omission of Tom Bombadil. It's like one of like the silliest like cinematic controversies that could exist, Like, do we need to have dividing lines about whether or not we're offended by Tom Bombadil not being in the Fellowship of the Ring movie?
So I like if you search for Tom Bombadil, one of the first results from Reddit is "fuck Tom Bombadil." I'm sorry to use the F word, but yeah.
In college, we had a communal bong that we named Tom Bombadil. Because he was useless and he would always throw things off whenever he made an appearance.
Oh, that's amazing.
Fantastic.
Yes. Yeah, so
oh my God.
We were all fine without him.
As we lose every Tom Bombadil fan as a listener forever. That's
right.
Yeah.
The Tom Bombadil contingent.
Tom Bombadil army is they're forming against us now.
If Duke doesn't put a justice for Tom Bombadil post up, I will be surprised,
We respect all opinions and worldviews, and that includes Tom Bombadil supporters. There's still a place for them within this show's community.
Yeah, I like it in the book, and Old Willow and all of that stuff that got cut, but didn't need to be here.
So sort of with like what we're talking about on not a more serious note, but with the movie, what we're talking about with like the pacing and stuff, how do you guys feel like the movie handles all of that within its 3-hour runtime? Like, do you feel like this is still like, does this feel like a movie that still flies by? Does it drag at all? And then I guess with that, the extended versions, or I guess just extended version of this.
Right. And I think I told you before we started the film, I don't think I've seen the theatrical version since I went to the theater to see it. So I've only ever owned the extended versions, and every time I've watched it since, it's been the extended versions. So I don't remember what the pacing was like beforehand. I only remember how it is now, and it works extremely well for such a long movie. Your interest is never faded. There are, lulls. There are moments in the film that are, places for both the characters and us to take a breather, Rivendell in particular. But I'm just astonished at how much there is in this movie, and that it's packed with all of these amazing scenes, these character moments, these epic action sequences, and it never feels overstuffed.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing feels like it's paced so quickly that what was going on with that tentacled thing in the pool in front of the Mines of Moria? I need to know more about that. No, that scene works. It's perfect, exactly. And then they move on into the darkness of Moria. So I've never really had a problem with the pacing of the extended versions. I think this was the version of the film that he wanted to make anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So one of these days I've got to go back and check out the abbreviated version and see how it holds up.
It's funny to call a 3-hour film the abbreviated version.
Yeah.
RJ, where do you fall on the extended versus theatrical versions?
I'm with Bob on that. I've watched the extended versions the past, I don't even know how many years. I know that my parents had the original version bought it as soon as it came out on DVD.
Mm-hmm.
But as soon as the extended versions came out, then I don't know. I know that 4 billion years is a long time to sit and watch one movie, but again, I'm perfectly fine with just having it on to kind of have the feeling of that world in the background. And I've, obviously when you've seen it a million times, you can get up and go do whatever you want to do and come back and sit down and you know exactly what's happened since you've been gone. So
Mm-hmm.
it's hard to, I feel like it's hard to gauge that without fresher eyes. But, and also, I mean, when you love it, it feels right. And I think Bob was spot on that the characters have the moments to build, the relationships and show us who they are and who they're going to become. But we also have just those, huge epic moments, and some of them are fast and some of them are slow, but it never stops. And it is like music, there's crescendos, there's, it speeds up, it slows down, it keeps you invested, at least for me, the whole way through.
Absolutely. I think both of you guys are spot on, even though I typically watch the theatrical version. I think just because, RJ, like you, I had immediately got the DVD as soon as it was released, and I believe it was only the theatrical version at that point. I don't remember when the extended versions were actually released. I do now have, the full box set, theatrical and extended, 4K, Ultra HD, all that good stuff.
Nice.
But I'm still so used to watching the theatrical version because that was the version. Again, this movie came out when I was in 4th grade. So this was a movie that I would watch every day after school, pop the DVD in and just have it on. And my friends and I would skip to different battle scenes and like play them out in the living room, like as we were watching them. So I've only ever been like very familiar with the theatrical version, but I need to sit with the extended version a little bit more. RJ, so like going back to what you're talking about with just like having this movie on in the background and like it always feeling like so nice and familiar, and like having something just like that you like genuinely love to be like around in your life. And Bob, what you were talking about with this sort of like being the perfect movie to like ease your mind during troubling times.
Right.
I think for the listener, I'm going to pull back the curtain a little bit and let them know that we were originally going to record this on the evening of Election Day in the US. So that meant that I was watching this movie during the day of Election Day.
Right.
And that was like the perfect distraction from whatever other outside anxieties were like creeping in to the day. And it's just like, this is one of those movies where it truly is like the ultimate form of escapism and like feeling so lost within a piece of art that, you know, all of the troubles of the world around you like seem to go away for a little bit, and like also gives you hope that everything will work out at the end of the day. Maybe not this movie specifically, more so Return of the King. But this one in particular does feel like just like the perfect escape from everything that, you know, you could be experiencing, whether it be in your personal life or the world at large. So Bob, I kind of want to hear more of like what you know, how you were feeling when you first saw it. If you
Right.
want to speak a little bit more to that.
Sure. So, of course, this movie came out in December 2001, which was 3 months after 9/11 happened. And there was the world before 9/11 and the world after 9/11. The world after it was not clear what kind of world it was going to be. Everything seemed very dark. And there were definitely storm clouds of war on the horizon. It was a shock to our collective psyche in the U.S. anyway. And watching The Lord of the Rings was in many ways an escape, but it was also, I remember distinctly sitting in the theater and hearing Gandalf's speech in the middle of Moria, where he's trying to decide which way to go. And Frodo, basically says what I felt and what I think a lot of people were thinking, like, why did I have to be born in this time? Why do I have to be going through this?
Mm.
And he was, basically says, nobody gets to decide that. You get to live in the world that you're living in. The only thing you get to do is choose what you do with the time that you're given. And it was like the greatest grandfather pep talk that you could ever have at that moment. It made me feel like he was talking directly to me and saying, don't give up. There's still hope. You're still alive. There's still things that you can do. And it just really resonated with me. And it felt like that was kind of the message of the film too, which is, yes, there are dark things in the world, but we can each form our own fellowship and do what we can to try and face that. So yeah, at that particular point in time, that was a message that I felt like I definitely needed to hear. And I feel like a lot of people felt the same way at that time.
Yeah, it is really interesting how this movie is kind of about, especially with like the forming of the fellowship of like how we can, band together for these like, greater causes, no matter how overwhelming they might seem. RJ, I don't know if you got a similar sense either when you were watching the movie for the first time, or if it's a movie that you like turn to in times of not trouble, but like just where you need this like reinforcement of like hope and sort of, the aspirations of like goodness in the world or whatever.
I mean, 100%. Everything Bob said, totally spot on from my perspective of the time, but also that was the end of like the first semester of my freshman year in college. So, that's really like a hugely transitional and transformational time. And so,
Mm-hmm.
this movie became a really big part of my family. Like we all love these movies. It became regular for any family get together to just pop Lord of the Rings on in the background, and you sit and watch while you're digesting lunch or whatever, or at Christmas, you know, they're fighting a cave troll while you're opening presents. It's it was just on. It was there. And so anytime I watch it, I have this not just like a feeling of nostalgia, but it's a comfort, like getting a hug from your mom or something. Like it's
Yeah.
very soothing. And I know obviously the big redemption of everything happens in Return of the King, and the ring is destroyed and life is going to be great. But there is, I think, a greater, I don't know, like I think a really good message of hope at the end of the Fellowship of the Ring as well. And Boromir's redemption arc is just one of my favorites. Parts of the movies, and ending it on that note of his sacrifice and Aragorn, Gimli, and Legolas not abandoning their friends to their fate. Like that is the hope you go into the next part with. And I love that's I love that about this movie. It's, you go into it figuring out, wow, we're this is really going to be going into the darkest days of Middle Earth here, and it gets darker and darker and darker, and then at the end there's just a little bit of light of hope. And
Yeah.
I think
If you had told me
it's
when I was a teenager, or even at the start of the movie, that I was going to be teary-eyed at the death of Boromir, I would have called you a liar. No way was I going to feel anything for that jackass. And I was bawling in the theater at that. I was like, yeah. I just watching it this morning, I was tearing up, and I knew everything that was coming. But that's Sean Bean's so good in that, but also just the choice that Jackson made to give him a redemption arc, which I don't think is clear in the books at all.
No, I mean, okay. I think this is a good opportunity for us to talk about something else that is really amazing and spectacular about this movie, and can maybe, not to say that our conversation has been, dark or depressing, but to maybe be a little lighter in the conversation. The casting is like absolutely incredibly spot on. And I don't know if I'm doing like a, 2020 hindsight kind of thing, but it feels like every casting choice in this is so insanely perfect for the success of this movie, including being as Boromir. And, obviously everyone else from Elijah Wood through all of the other hobbits to Gandalf and Legolas and the rest. So I just wanted to, get some thoughts on what you guys think of all of the casting choices, that were made in, because this is the first one. So, if it doesn't work here, it doesn't really work for the rest of them. So curious to hear what you guys think about all that.
We're going to jump in. It's amazing. It's one of those things that feels like alchemy. You know, how could you have imagined that all of these different actors, like I didn't really know Viggo Mortensen from anything before this movie. And like he was like the third or fourth person that they chose. Like Daniel Day-Lewis got a nod. Who else? Nicolas Cage was offered
This
this
would have
role.
been so weird.
That, yeah.
Oh God, yeah.
But I just believed him, and he had my sword absolutely. And then the Hobbits are all amazingly cast. You have no idea Billy Boyd is like 10 years older than the other actors. Sean Astin as Sam is, the absolute hero of all three films for me. The one that made the most sense was Elijah Wood. It was like, well, yeah, he's absolutely perfect for that role. But everything, you could just go list through all the cast and be like, well, you got lucky there, and then after a while, you're like, is it luck when everybody perfectly embodies the role that they were chosen for? I don't know.
Down to like the Hobbit extras at Bilbo's party. They like how do you portray this cranky old Hobbit so well with just a facial expression? That's fantastic.
Proud feet.
Yep, absolutely. And Ian McKellen.
Yep.
Holy crap! What a perfect Gandalf. Yeah.
It's absolutely. I think the one for me that is indicative of how amazing the casting is Sean Astin. Like,
yeah.
What do you mean Rudy is going to save Middle Earth? No, that doesn't make sense. But Goonies, then you think about it.
Well, I guess Goonies do make hobbits. Never mind. I complaint.
But then you're like, okay, yeah, the undersized linebacker from Notre Dame is also going to be the Hobbit who holds on to, this unwavering hope in order to save all of Middle Earth. Like, yeah, I guess it kind of does make sense. But at the same time, you're like, no way does that check out. And then like the perfect mix of like the two American Hobbits versus like the British Hobbits, like, but it never fully like feels disconnected. It's so weird how it all just like perfectly works out. And I think is a sign of like, just how much care was put into putting this movie together, and everything sort of like working towards this amazing end product that we ended up getting.
Yeah. And you could just go through everybody. Like, was this Orlando Bloom's first movie? I can't even remember if it was or not, but he was perfectly cast as Legolas. And I don't know about you, but Cate Blanchett as Galadriel was like terrifying. She was awesome.
Yeah. I don't know if I don't think it was Orlando Bloom's first movie, but it was certainly the first time I can remember being
even Liv Tyler's like
huge Orlando. Yes.
Yeah.
Liv Tyler's.
Yeah.
Like Empire Records, Liv Tyler is the epitome of like she's awesome. I don't know if it was, I guess it was the year after Fellowship of the Ring came out. I got her a replica of her sword for a Christmas present.
Aw, that's awesome.
Yep. Gimli. Yeah. I don't think Gimli ever could get enough love. He's one of my favorites, and I think I've seen complaints that he is just the comic relief and doesn't get a lot of deep parts. But I disagree. I think
those people
his moments are wonderful. Yeah, his relationship with Legolas, the way it develops, is just one of my absolute favorite parts of the whole trilogy. And God, he can deliver a one-liner. He's just just awesome.
He's great.
In some ways, though, like that is how people express their like friendship and love for their friends. Like everyone has a friend like Gimli where yes, they're kind of just like the funny one in the group, but also, through like all of the subtle different ways and through that comedy, how much they care for their friends. And you can tell Gimli, as much as any other character, even within this movie, you can tell how much he cares about the people around him, and obviously also like the cause that they are all fighting for.
Yeah. And that the moment where he tells them what he got as a gift from Galadriel too. The 3 hairs. Yeah. Oh, God, that's so good. The only actor that I had a problem with the first time that I watched it was Hugo Weaving as Elrond. And I only because he so much embodied Agent Smith from The Matrix to me, that I kept like giving him the side eye during the whole thing. I was like, when's this guy going to betray everybody? I've since bought in, but I do remember distinctly being like, wait a minute.
Then you find yourself going back to the Matrix and going, wait, maybe Agent Smith was right. I also think that, I mean, I don't know if you guys have read the stories of like the behind the scenes stuff, but the cast was very close.
Oh yeah.
And still are very close, just from, random bits of pop culture news that I see. And I think that clearly has a positive effect on their ability to show the development of the Fellowship. And I think that's really cool, because you hear so much about just really crappy atmospheres on movie sets and actors hating each other, even though they have great on-scene chemistry. And so it's nice to look at that and see, it's such a big cast and they're all amazing. And everyone from, Frodo, oh my God, Elijah Wood, up to, Ian McKellen, like, and everyone in between. Yeah. They're just a spectrum of ages and their acting history and everything. And they all became a family, and that's freaking cool.
The thing that I saw most recently, which probably has been around for a long time, but that Dominic Monaghan and Billy Boyd have tried to convince Viggo Mortensen that to be allowed to be buried next to him when they die, because Pippin and Merry are buried next to Aragorn when in the books. So and he's basically like, no, guys, no. But that they even want that is so indicative of how close those guys are.
So amazing.
I just saw that recently. I've seen it a couple of times, but just, scrolling through Facebook.
Yep.
Facebook obviously knows that I'm a huge Lord of the Rings fan. So,
as they should, all algorithms should assume that we are all massive Lord of the Rings fans, because everyone is. How do you guys feel like this movie mixes in sort of like the action and adventure elements of the story? Because I feel like, obviously, and we'll talk about in the next 2 episodes, but the next 2 movies really do ramp up the intensity on that. But I'm curious, do you guys think that there is enough of that within this movie?
I mean, I think until you get to the 2 Towers, you watch The Fellowship of the Rings the first time and you're like, my God, these fight scenes are amazing. And, then you get to the 2 Towers and you're like, oh, well, this is amazing. But I mean, even the in Moria, they just it is so well, and you don't even there. I don't, that is not a very long, drawn out battle like some of the later ones you get to, but it is still the slow build up, and they're reading the diary and the skeleton head falling down the well. Mm-hmm. It's just so tense and just just got that very delicious development of the moment, and then all hell breaks loose, and it's fun. It's just fun, and the cave troll looks freaking real.
Yeah.
That's something you saw before.
Nope.
No.
Nope.
Rewatching this recently, or rewatching this all the time, and rewatching the first Harry Potter for the episode that we did about that earlier this season, which people should definitely go check out. The cave troll in this looks so much better than the cave troll in Harry Potter.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's true. But Jackson was always a effects director. I mean, he even did the special effects for his early films himself in his mom's kitchen. So that he was focused and that he built, what I would argue is the second largest special effects house in the world, basically on the back of these three films.
Mm-hmm.
Because there was Industrial Light and Magic, and then after this there was also Weta. So he was definitely building all kinds of things as he was building these movies too. So the effects are amazing. Yeah.
RJ, back to the Mines of Moria. I was kind of just thinking, like, the way that's like a mini horror movie within the film. The way that everything is sort of built before, they end up fighting a bunch of orcs and a cave troll. But it is really interesting
And
how
the Balrog.
Yeah. How that sort of just like switch up happens like kind of seamlessly within the movie. Which is also great. Like, just thinking about, like, I guess this movie's more adventure than action. Like, the scope and range of locations that they end up in is pretty amazing and is like almost reflective of like different seasons. And this is not a theory that I've worked out before, and I'm just trying to, like, I'm working through it now out loud in real time. But the Shire is kind of like a summer, springtime kind of vibe. At the end, I'm forgetting where it is that they are exactly, but there's like a very like autumnal kind of feel.
Yeah.
And then obviously as they're going through like the Mines of Moria and stuff, that feels more like wintry. I don't know if there's anything to that, but I'm just kind of spitballing out loud.
No, I like that.
Yeah.
That definitely
Yeah.
has that feel. Yeah. And it's, it's indicative of what the lands of Middle Earth are going through,
Mm-hmm.
So I wouldn't be surprised to find that that's something that they definitely did, at least with the lighting and setting. Maybe it was a happy coincidence, as so many things with this film seems to have turned out to be. But that going back to the action sequences, I actually feel like there's a progression of Jackson's ability to stage action from the first battle on Weathertop with the ring wraiths,
Mm-hmm.
which is kind of blocky and a little static, and then that final battle with the Uruk-hai in the forest, where you've got the camera like floating down through the trees on these amazing long shots and these multiple levels of fighting happening, and you watching him develop his skill at staging these as it goes. And that whole forest scene is everything's covered in leaves. It's absolutely autumnal.
That's a great shout about just like the development of how the sort of like action set pieces are presented throughout the movie. Do you guys have a favorite location or setting within this one? I feel like there's so many. Like, Rivendell is awesome. All the scenes there are great. Mines of Moria are just like absolutely spectacular. What are some of your guys' favorites?
Wow.
The Shire.
Yeah, I know. It's like certain times it's the Shire, because that's a place you want to live.
Mm-hmm.
It's so perfect and idyllic looking. Don't want to live in Bree. That looks really wet.
Too much rain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But Rivendell is amazing. It's like, it's an Alan Lee painting brought to life, essentially. Moria.
I find Rivendell weirdly depressing. I don't know why, but I always
I
have.
get that. I totally get that.
Yeah.
That's kind of like the elves' whole vibe. They're like
Yeah.
weirdly always depressed.
Yeah.
Yep.
So when I was younger, I might have said Moria because it's dark and creepy and exciting. But at an older age, I definitely go with the Shire. It is comfortable. They seem to, have plenty of food and drink and fun, and that looks excellent. Plus, the round doors are just really cool.
The round doors are pretty cool.
Just yeah.
We all have to get out to New Zealand and see the Shire and all the other locations that are like mostly still intact.
That's on my bucket list.
Yeah, I would love to do that. I have friends who've gone and done that, and it's definitely one of the high points of their lives so far.
Yeah, it sounds absolutely amazing. Another random thing that I have in my notes: Frodo should have died like 5 times in this movie. That's like there was one rewatch where that was my big takeaway. Like this movie is just about how Frodo nearly escapes death time and time again.
Yep, that's true.
He's like Michael Myers or something. He just always,
he
always pops back up.
The guy gets stabbed like 8 times. Like,
yep, yeah, he gets lucky a lot.
What's going on? What do you guys have like a major takeaway from this movie in particular? Like, or does it sort of change time after time?
Oh man.
That's a good question.
Nothing similar to Frodo should have died 5 times.
Right? No, we all succumb to temptation sometimes. Try to move past that if you can. That even the smallest member of society has something to contribute and may save all of your lives someday. We all need a father figure like Gandalf. I don't know, lots of stuff depending on the day. I wish that I was as cool with a bow as I'm spacing already.
Legolas,
yeah. Also in winter, I wish I could walk on top of the snow like Legolas does.
Yeah. And take care of your gardeners.
Yes.
Always take care of your gardeners.
That's
sure.
That's awesome.
Do you guys have favorite members of the Fellowship?
Well, I'm just going to say Sam. Sam is, even when I first read the books, I was like, how is Sam not the hero of this story?
Yeah.
He is the hero of this story.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. Yeah. And Sean Astin just plays him as the most solid. Like, I almost feel like if you'd given the ring to Sam, he would have just walked straight there with no problems.
Yeah.
Would have been a really short movie, but
right. Yeah. Good point.
That should have been like the alternate take. Is that the multiverse version?
Right. Yeah. There you go. We have a version of this in which Sam just walks into Mordor and dumps it in on Tuesday of the same week.
One does not simply walk into Mordor unless you're Sam.
Sam.
Yeah, we weren't expecting it, my lord. I'm sorry. And if Aragorn asked me to stand up and fight for him, I absolutely would.
Yeah, that checks out.
Pencil. I don't have anything else.
I don't think I could pick a favorite character because it'd just change like every week, possibly every day. I think the more I watch it, the more I love Boromir. And I'm kind of with you, Bob. Like when I first watched it, I was like, this guy's like, this is terrible. He's, and I don't know. It just, I guess every time I watch it, I pick up more nuance. And then when you watch the later movies, you see some of, what he as a character was dealing with
Right.
to bring him to that point. And so it's easier to have some sympathy for that. But also Sean Bean's just freaking awesome, and I love him.
Yeah.
And Aragorn is always going to be, near the top. He's just Viggo Mortensen. He's Aragorn. I don't know how he does it, but he is, and that's awesome.
When I was back to when this movie first came out, and as you can tell by my decision to be a Lord of the Rings guy as opposed to a Harry Potter kid, I was always big on being a contrarian. And when this movie first came out, obviously, like, people within my age group were like, Legolas is the coolest character because he's cool as shit. And in order to be a contrarian, I was like, actually, I like Boromir. And I didn't actually know why I was making that decision other than to be a contrarian. But now that you're talking about it, RJ, like, he does make sense. He is like maybe the most fascinating character within this movie in particular. So I don't know if I would say that he's my favorite now, but he is he has maybe the most interesting character arc within this film out of anyone within the Fellowship, for sure.
Yeah. Thought you were going to go with Pippin there for a moment, but
there were moments where I was, I would never choose Merry or Pip, but I would be a big Merry and Pip guy.
yeah.
I mean, they're just like, they totally don't have to do this.
Yeah. Like they're just stealing food from Farmer Maggot, and then they end up caught up in this whole mess.
And they don't have as much like moral conviction as someone like Sam.
Right.
So it is interesting that they decide to they're like, you know what? Screw it. We're for the boys. We're going in. We don't know why, but we're doing it.
Yeah. Yep.
Yep.
I think if I had to choose who I wanted to hang out with, it would be Merry and Pippin, obviously.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah. Those guys know all the best places to go.
Yeah. And they have that weird blind loyalty where they're not like, okay, like we are so against, we like feel the need to root out evil within this world. And like, that's why we're going, or we feel this like great responsibility to our families and legacies and all that stuff. And that's why we're going. There's like, hey, if Frodo's going, I'm going, and no questions asked, but I'll do what I can and I'll be there. And sometimes you need a friend like that.
Yeah. I always love that moment early on in the Fellowship when they're still traveling down by the Misty Mountains, where Boromir's like trying to teach them how to defend themselves. Mm-hmm. He accidentally hits Merry, and Pippin's like, ah! He just immediately attacks him. That's hilarious to me. I love that.
You know what? That makes me think of I've never seen the movie this is from, but I've seen in, like Facebook and Instagram reels. It's a clip from a movie. Ben Affleck is talking to Jeremy Renner, and he's like, I need your help. We're going to hurt some people. You can't ask, can't ask any questions. Yeah. And then, Jeremy Renner is like, well, whose car are we taking? That's Merry and Pippin. They're like, doesn't matter why or who, but we're down. Let's go.
Yep. I think that's
ride or die. Yeah, I think that's the town.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I mean, I think like one of the amazing things about this movie, among all of the amazing things, gosh, we haven't even gotten to the score yet. I feel like I say that in every episode when we're like an hour in. I'm just like, oh yeah, also the score in this is amazing.
Yeah.
But all of like the body double work is so good on top of like all of like the special effects. Like there's rarely a moment when you're watching this movie where you're like, this all looks fake and stuff. You're just like, no, those hobbits are half the size as Gandalf, and that makes sense.
Yes.
And Elijah Wood is half the height of Ian McKellen, for sure. I believe that.
Yeah. And I love that's all practical effects for the most part. It's just forced perspective work and doubles, and they obviously had the ability to do all CGI if they wanted to, but by making it that way, it all felt real and everybody all felt like they were in the same scene.
It reminds me of why I like the special effects in the original Star Wars trilogy better than anything that
Right.
comes after, because there is more that is actually tactile, even if it looks a little more, fake. It's a real fake thing and not
Yeah.
like some super super weird CGI fake thing, and it just
Hmm.
gives that like a little tangible piece to latch onto and find that like realism, and I think that's part of what
Absolutely.
makes it so easy to be immersed in.
For me, tangibility is always such a big thing with these movies and their special effects. And like, are you using whatever like CG technology you have at your disposal to further the tangibility of whatever story it is that you're trying to tell, or are you just like in some way taking away from all of the tangible aspects that like would otherwise be there? And that goes to like also with this movie, like building all of those sets, like building out like an entire like reconstructed Middle Earth within New Zealand, like, and
Yeah.
not just shooting everything on a green screen. Like, yes, there are a lot of moments that are shot on green screen, but like physically walking into the mines of Moria, like seeing the trees in Rivendell, like all of that goes such a long way to this movie feeling like such a real life version of Middle Earth.
Yeah. How much does New
Yeah.
Zealand owe Peter Jackson?
Yeah.
Because I mean, there's so many,
Or
epic.
how much does Peter Jackson owe New Zealand?
Oh, there we go. That's the
point.
question.
Good point. Yeah, but
Because,
I mean,
it's
you
not
have
the same movie if it's
scenery.
shot in Toledo. That's it's just
Random stray for Toledo.
sorry, Toledo. You're
Yeah, but it's just that those were real places, real the Misty Mountains exist, and you can go there.
Yeah. Now I'm thinking there's one listener in Toledo who is a huge Tom Bombadil fan.
Oh, he's done.
oh, he's coming for me. That's
I'm out.
Yeah, like I can excuse all the Tom Bombadil talk, but random strays at Toledo, now I'm out.
to clarify. I'm sure Toledo is great. Probably just not for the Lord of the Rings backdrop.
Right,
The
yeah.
only thing I know about it is that Klinger from MASH was from Toledo. That's really the extent of my knowledge.
But yeah, probably not. But no, I think, Bob, what you're saying, New Zealand has definitely seen an influx of like tourism, based on people wanting to visit Middle Earth.
Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And we're talking about special effects and practical effects and stuff, and we don't get to talk about it much in this film because it really starts cranking in the next film. But Gollum is an exception to that rule that actually is also done extremely well. We only get to see his fingers and his eyes really in this one, but it's sad that we don't get to talk about it.
No, that's a little teaser for the next two episodes.
Yep.
Speaking of the next two episodes and the next two movies, I feel like and we've kind of touched on it, but there is like a magic and a whimsy that is existent within this movie that I feel like kind of gets lost in the next two, obviously because like things get more serious and darker and all that stuff, and are obviously still great stories in their own regard. But I think for me, that's kind of why I like this movie a little bit more than the other two, is because it can be more of a comfort movie, like what you were saying, RJ. There is a bit more like innocence in this movie that for me is always like a big draw for a comfort film.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one of the reasons why it's my favorite of the trilogy. I've always preferred hero discovered stories over hero defined stories anyway. So, and this is the, a heroic group getting discovered sort of here. So yeah, no, it is more positive in a lot of ways, there's a lot of difficult times that are to come in the next two films. So,
For sure. RJ, I feel like I cut you off before.
No, that's okay. I don't remember what I was going to say.
sorry.
Um, uh, I do, before we get too far away from, you mentioned the score earlier, and I
Mhm.
do just want to say that it's amazing, and it is one of my favorite background sounds for if I'm working and I need a little bit of focus music. I like to put on the Lord of the Rings soundtrack.
Yeah.
Absolutely amazing. I have not done it yet, but I can only assume that all of the screenings of this movie that are done across the country with live orchestras doing the score has to be one of like the best movie experiences that anyone could have.
Oh, yeah.
I think,
Yeah, that sounds awesome.
I don't know if it was everywhere, but I feel like a few places like in the New York City area were doing live orchestra with the extended re-releases, which is just like nuts.
Yeah. Oh my God. I can't, you're there for a long time. It's a lot longer than your standard symphony show is going to be.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
I'm sure it's absolutely amazing.
It's funny to me, and maybe it's just because it's the horror roots of both the director, but I love that one of Howard Shore's first soundtracks was for David Cronenberg's The Brood. It's hilarious to me. So
Yeah.
anyway, and The Fly, of course. But
Very different vibes.
yep. This is one of the few soundtracks I've actually purchased.
RJ, I think Bob and I both mentioned that this is our favorite of the trilogy, and we typically don't do like rankings and all that stuff on the show, but is this also your favorite, or is there another one that takes the cake?
It's not my favorite.
Ah,
Now I've got to be the rebel. No, Two Towers is my favorite.
nice.
Although
Amazing.
I think Fellowship would come second, but it's not like Two Towers is very clearly my favorite. The other
Mhm.
two, I don't have there's not a huge disparity between how much I enjoy either of them to so they come in second place as a tie, I guess. That's what I'm
That's
saying.
fair. Well,
Um,
it works out because you will be on for the Two Towers episode next week. So
Yes.
everyone will get to hear why that is your favorite of the trilogy.
Maybe you shouldn't have mentioned that. People are like, "Oh God, no, I don't want to come back and listen to it."
Oh
Oh, no.
no.
They will for sure. Well, I don't know what I'm saying. I think we've sort of covered everything that I wanted to cover. I don't know if you guys had anything else that you wanted to mention specifically about the Fellowship of the Ring.
I wanted to ask you guys what your favorite scene as of today is, because I know there are so many, and that's easy to pick a different one every particular day. But is there something that on this moment you're like, this stood out to me, this is my favorite scene today?
RJ, I'll let you go first.
For me, it is the scene where Boromir is trying to save Merry and Pippin, where he is fighting the big Urgai and taking all the
Yeah.
arrows. I mean, obviously, sorry, Sean Bean. It's not. I don't think it's great that you're taking arrows to the chest, but it is a very powerful scene. It's got a lot of emotion. The action is great. And the lead up and the after is just chef's kiss. Mwah.
Yeah.
Amazing. I'm going to cheat a little bit, Bob. And I'm going to give you a top 3. And 3 is going to be that scene that RJ just mentioned, because
Yeah.
I feel like that packs most of the emotional weight of this movie. Like most of it is within that scene, and it's a pretty remarkable moment. Number 2, I'm going to go with what would like classically be my choice, and that's like everything that happens in the Mines of Moria, because like I said, when I was a wee lad and would pop this movie on after school, and I would act out, particularly that scene with my friends in the living room, like we thought we were fighting a cave troll. And it sort of like really opened my mind to just like imagination and like how it can sort of become a tangible thing within the real world or like a movie version. So that's always been something that's been like super special to me. But now, you know, sitting here as a 32-year-old, mostly adult person who doesn't play make-believe Lord of the Rings in the living room anymore, at least that often. I would say
what?
I would say the actual the scene in Rivendell where the Fellowship comes together after
nice.
all of the arguments and stuff about, you know, what to do with the ring and how to destroy it. Because I do feel like that is the sort of like crux of the movie. It's this moment of this friendship and bond being formed over the idea that like we all have this responsibility to one another, like no matter what your background is, right? You could be a dwarf, you could be an elf, you could be a wizard or a hobbit, you know, a man from why am I blanking on the names of
Gondor?
You could be from Gondor or, you know, wherever it is. Yeah. And we can all come together to form these bonds to root out the evil that exists within the world. And I feel like that's, you know, the heart and soul of the movie.
Nice. I like those.
What would yours be?
Oh, so you guys have mentioned great ones. I think I already mentioned the scene with Gandalf and Frodo. But for whatever reason, today it's a relatively minor scene, honestly. It's after Boromir's tried to take the ring and Frodo's gone up to the old watchtower area and been seen by the Eye, and Aragorn shows up. And that whole scene from, you know, Frodo asking him, can you protect me from yourself? And Aragorn kneeling down and folding his hands over the ring because he knows what's going to happen. The moment that he sees Sting glowing blue, stands up and tells Frodo to run, and the camera pulls away as he turns and walks around to face that horde of orcs coming up the hill. For some reason, that really got to me this particular time around. That moment of this is why he's the king. This is why he's Aragorn and not just Strider. Sword up and goes for that. Yeah. For some reason, that one got to me this particular day.
I like
That's
that.
A good one.
That's a great.
I
got
chills.
Yeah.
Like just. Whew.
I gotta say, this is the first time recording one of these episodes where I want to immediately turn around and put on this movie again.
I know, right? Oh my God.
Like usually, you know, by the end of recording, I'm like, okay, that's enough of that movie. I've been thinking about that movie for a while now, like a couple of days. It's just been sitting around in my head. And now I'm like, I got to rewatch Fellowship of the Ring.
Yeah.
Absolutely amazing. I feel like ending our discussion with favorite scene as of today, this moment right now, is a great place for us to end what has been an incredible discussion about this amazing movie. And if you guys agree, we can shift over to some recommendations.
Sure.
No.
All right. I can't wait to hear.
What did we miss, RJ?
No. We can go on with recommendations.
You were just joshing. Okay.
She was doing what's his name from the opening scene. Throw it into the fires of Mount Doom. No.
Yeah. No. I love it.
BRB, you gotta screw Middle Earth.
Yeah.
Let's do some recommendations and not ruin the fate of the rest of Middle Earth. So For anyone new to the proceedings, we'll quickly run through what it is that we do for each movie in the canon. We also recommend 3 things per guest host to check out if you like said movie. Of those 3 things, at least one of them has to be another movie, but the other 2 can be any and everything else. They can be more movies. It can be a band or an album or a comic book or a video game or a board game, a TV show, a single episode of TV, a season of TV, really any and everything. We like to get very creative in terms of the connections to the movie of topic. And yeah, I think with that, also we can't recommend other movies that are within the canon. So we will not be recommending The Two Towers or Return of the King, but pretty much everything else is fair game. So I think with that, we can jump in, and for the order, we can go Bob and then RJ and then Raph, and we'll see what we've got.
Alrighty. Okay, so hopefully I'm not stepping on anyone's toes with these recommendations. I mean, I have 2 fairly straightforward recommendations and then one goofy sailor-inspired sort of recommendation at the very end.
Nice.
Which will be my only film. My first recommendation is, so 2024 is the 70th anniversary of the release of the Fellowship of the Ring. And the thing that I'm going to recommend it is actually having its 50th anniversary this year. It's something that I actually was involved in before I really knew before I'd actually read The Lord of the Rings. But I've spent more time trying to recreate the feeling of a group of fellow adventurers getting together in this than in any time that I've watched the Fellowship of the Ring, which I know that doesn't actually make any sense. But anyway, I'm recommending Dungeons and Dragons, the role-playing game.
Hell yeah.
It's 50th anniversary.
I had 14 other recommendations.
Oh no! I knew that was a possibility with you. I'm sorry. But yeah, it's the 50th anniversary. A brand new version, not brand new version, a revised version, anniversary version was just released. The 5th edition rules, which have been in place for I think the last 10 years or so, is the basis for all of this. The rules are available free. Just search free D&D rules. They'll give you the basic rules for free. And it's a really good time to get back into it and form your own fellowship and have some fun.
Nice. That's awesome. I love that. I've actually never played D&D, but I know that both of y'all are pretty big on it. So that's a sweet recommendation. Kind of perfect that it is lining up with the 50th anniversary. That's sweet.
If I can add to that, just if you want to play D&D and you don't have any nerdy friends that you can play with, check your local comic book stores and game stores for Adventure League games that you can go and, people run games that you can go and join for free, and they'll teach you how to play and stuff. That's so.
Yeah.
Love it. Sweet. RJ, what's your... Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I had oddly a lot more recommendations that came up for me for this, but only one of them is a movie, and I'm going to go with that first. And it is The Goonies.
Nice.
And I checked. I could not. It's as far as I could find, that is not in the canon, and that's going to have to change one day. But so I think for now I'm safe. So obviously Sean Astin is I think that The Goonies was his first movie. He's very young, and it's the best of the 80s has to offer. Really, I think a group of kids traveling to through the underbelly of their town that's getting taken over by developers, and finding an old pirate ship to save everybody from having to leave. It's just freaking awesome. It is.
I'm surprised it's
one
not
of
in the canon.
As am I.
That's
awesome.
I'm not the
I
biggest
was like,
Goonies
surely
guy,
it's
but
here. Nope.
It's okay. We like you anyway.
yeah, I feel like this is I feel like the Goonies is like a perfect screen age wasteland canon kind of movie. So this does feel like a place where it's hard for me to admit that I'm not all the way in on the Goonies. It might be because I didn't see it as a kid. So
right.
Maybe you're just not trying hard enough.
Yeah, I will definitely give it another try. I feel like that's a movie that I will constantly try to rewatch and appreciate, but for some reason it doesn't fully click with me. But I totally understand why everyone loves it. I think I'm definitely the weirdo in the situation. I will not yuck other people's yums for enjoying the Goonies at all.
No problem.
It's okay. We still love you.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. Sweet. Great pick. For my first recommendation, I'm actually super excited about this one. I have like 15 recommendations because obviously doing all three of these movies, trying to like figure out like which ones I want to tie to which movie. But like most of them can apply to any of them, but whatever. For this movie, obviously we like go through the Misty Mountains, and if you're a fan of Led Zeppelin, you know that they have a song called Misty Mountain Hop on Led Zeppelin 4, which is one of the best albums ever. There's also a song on that one called The Battle of Evermore, another Lord of the Rings reference. So if you need an excuse to listen to the greatest collection of 4 musicians ever put together, like this is it. Go listen to Led Zeppelin 4. It's one of the best albums by one of the best bands, if not the best band ever constructed. So yeah, that's like, go listen to it. It's dope.
Nice. That's an awesome rec. I love that.
I was listening to a lot of Led Zeppelin this morning before recording.
As well you should.
Yes. That is great. Okay. My second recommendation, I was sort of trying to think about epic fantasy stories and series that I loved and love. And there were a lot of things. I've read a ton of fantasy in like the late 80s, early 90s before kind of burning out on it a little. But one series that I never burned out on, even if the end of it didn't quite gel for me, was Stephen King's The Dark Tower.
Nice.
This is a series of 7 books that were part of the original series. There are a number of ancillary stories, and some people suggest that even a good 90% of his other books are connected to the Dark Tower in some way, because while the main focus is on Midworld, is a fantasy world in which time has passed on and the last gunslinger is trying to save all of reality by getting to the Dark Tower that's at the center of all things. It weaves in and out of the real world, a fictional version of the real world. Stephen King himself shows up as a character in one of the books. It's a massive fantasy undertaking that he wrote over decades. And while it has its ups and downs, it's definitely worth the journey and highly recommended.
Nice. The movie was awful.
No, it was so bad. Oh, God. That was, yeah. Whew. Forgot that existed. Thanks.
Yeah. Sorry about that.
I love Stephen King, but that is not one that I have ever tried. I guess I tend to stick to the more his traditional like horror stuff.
Yeah.
Because who wants to sleep? But I will have to give it a try.
if you've read most of his normal stuff, some of his books like Black House and that was the sequel to something that escapes me now. Anyway, a lot of his books do connect to the Dark Tower, so you may find elements like Randall Flagg from The Stand shows up in the fourth Dark Tower book. So anyway, I will stop pushing that.
I did not know that, but that's really cool. My turn again, I think, right?
Yep.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. I've only had 1 cup of coffee this morning, so that's my excuse for not being able to count to 2 here.
Fair excuse.
So my next recommendation is a video game that was released a couple of weeks ago, New World Eternum, and it is in the vein. It's a online massive multiplayer online role-playing game, and sort of in the vein of like wow, my brain just went a World of Warcraft kind of thing. You're just running around doing quests in a world that's been torn apart by supernatural kind of magic-y stuff, and I don't spend a lot of time playing video games anymore. I did when I was younger, but I have 3 kids and not a lot of time. But this one I found super easy to sit down and play for what little bit of free time I had, and then come and go back to it. The story is interesting, and the graphics are pretty cool, and yeah, it was fun. I have not spent as much time as I would like playing it, but it has been fun so far, so I do recommend it.
Nice. That's awesome. I hadn't heard of this, but it looks damn cool.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. I might have to check that out. Although I'm not a huge gamer, I feel like I don't even have kids, and I still rarely find time to pick up the sticks, as they say. Okay, for my second recommendation, I'm going to go with something super basic and obvious, but I feel like it just needs to be done. And I feel like this is the movie to do it for out of the trilogy. So I am going to recommend that everyone read The Hobbit. Very straightforward.
Yeah.
If you haven't read it, check it out. And then from there, see if you want to read the rest of the books. But The Hobbit is an amazing place to start. So going to recommend it.
Yeah, that's a great recommendation. Too cool. Yeah, and that was actually I read The Lord of the Rings first and read The Hobbit afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
So, excuse me. Oh, can I have a coughing fit?
Just in time for your third recommendation.
And muting. Just did that. All right. Yeah, you should definitely read The Hobbit. Not necessarily watch The Hobbit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was really afraid that that's what you were going to say.
No.
No, don't do that.
No.
But reading it, great.
Just read it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wasn't Guillermo del Toro going to do The Hobbit at one point, and then had to bail? I always wonder what would that have been like.
Yeah, I feel like that would have been pretty sick.
Yeah, I agree.
We'll never know.
You'll never know. All right, my third rec before I die of coughing here. We did not have a lot of high fantasy movies that did great before The Lord of the Rings came out. Most of them were low budget, sword and sorcery sort of affairs. Most of them coming in the wake of the success of Conan, which I don't know if that's in the canon or not, but that's not my recommendation, actually. My recommendation is a very low budget fantasy film from 1982 that was obviously inspired by Conan, but has its own kind of weird world in which it is all situated. It's got touches of horror. It's directed by Don Coscarelli, who did Phantasm. Actually, I'm talking about Beastmaster.
Of course.
Yes. It's so cheap and low budget, but I love this movie so much. Stars Mark Singer as the titular Beastmaster who can speak with animals. It includes I think he's a tiger painted black, and two ferret companions. I wanted ferrets so bad when I was a kid and saw this movie. Also stars Tanya Roberts and John Amos, who just recently passed away, and Rip Torn. It's super fun and atmospheric in a low budget way, and was one of my favorite fantasy movies before The Lord of the Rings came along.
Nice. Great recommendation.
That's a good one.
I have not seen it, but sounds rad.
I just have to say, I own a copy of this on DVD that I purchased for $1 in an envelope at a Walgreens.
I love everything about that.
That's perfect. Yeah. Hang on. Okay. So I was going to recommend some Led Zeppelin music as well, but I have a second backup recommendation, so we're all good. I am going to recommend a book series from the 90s, and it is something that I read when I was, I think, probably in middle school. So it's more of like youth novels, but I've actually recently reread it as an adult, and it's still fun and a quick read. But it is the Enchanted Forest Chronicles by Patricia C. Reed, and the stories revolve around a princess who decides she doesn't want to be just a silly, empty-headed princess like her sisters, and just a figurehead for some king, and runs away to become a dragon's princess, and learns magic, and eventually ends up saving dragons. And there's a lot of different adventures throughout the book series, but it's very different, I think, as far as especially for young girls. I think it was very not transformational. That's a very big word, but it made a big impression on me as a kid, and it was very empowering. So I highly recommend reading it, even if you're 42.
I love it.
Or older.
Very cool. Yeah, I had not heard of it, but I am adding it to my list.
Yeah, that sounds great. I love that. Awesome recommendation. For my last one, I have to go with a movie. And I don't know why, but I was like almost scared that one of you guys was going to mention this, but it probably wouldn't have made sense. Because I don't think we all think in the same weird ways that I think. But I am going to recommend another movie about a group of people who are in ways driven to madness and to do all sorts of weird things and behave sort of outside of themselves due to a piece of jewelry or something that can then become a piece of jewelry. Similar to the way that the One Ring makes everyone go crazy and psychotic and different than how they would normally act. But the other movie that I'm talking about where this happens is, of course, 2019's Uncut Gems, which is actually one of my favorite movies.
Wow.
Oddly enough.
Wow.
Yeah. Jewelry driving people to madness.
Yep. Not sure there's anybody in there that I would pledge my sword to, but that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's hilarious.
That is, you're right. I never would have thought to recommend that, but I think that's awesome.
Yeah. There aren't that many other movies. I was trying to think of something of like a jewelry connection.
Right.
And that was like the only movie that I could think of. So there we go. Uncut Gems. Our final recommendation. Bob and RJ, thank you guys again for joining. This has been a total blast. Very happy that we are doing this Lord of the Rings trilogy and doing it all together. I'm happy that you guys were able to join to kick us off. This has been a ton of fun. Before we get out of here, as we always do, with our lovely screenagers or our Saw contributors. I think our fans, or not fans, fans is a weird word. Our listeners are screenagers. You guys are Saw contributors. Whatever. You guys have anything coming up on the
Fans and
website?
not rage listeners.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any articles, reviews, write-ups, or anything that you guys have coming up on the site or anything?
Still doing my, although I'm actually extremely late this week, I'm still doing Fear Flashback Fridays. I think we're all taking a little bit of a break after the push that was Bobtober.
Mm-hmm.
So this month is a little slower, but then December we're going to crank back up with Christmas movies and that sort of thing. So I'm looking forward to that. But I don't personally have anything. I have a project that I pitched the guys that we'll see if that works out. That could be big, but it's going to be
Nice.
a discussion about it.
Ooh,
First, so.
under wraps.
Oh,
Exciting.
Now I'm really curious.
Yeah.
Tomorrow, my Canon article on The Wizard of Oz
Oh
will
yeah,
be coming out. So yeah, that'll be
Amazing.
That'll be fun.
Yeah.
awesome.
I think featuring a blurb from me, but
Well, now it is, even if it wasn't.
yeah.
You have talked yourself into writing a blurb?
Yeah. Awesome. Well, good stuff all around. I don't believe I have much on the horizon in terms of write-ups or anything on the website. Earlier this month, we had a new movies to stream. If you're looking for things to add to your watch list for the month of November, I feel like I've been saying this for a few months now, but I may or may not be getting around to a Megalopolis review.
Oh, nice. I'll be interested.
We'll see if there's anything there. But yeah, otherwise, I mean, there's a ton of great stuff. We have 2 new contributors to the website who have been pumping out reviews like it's nobody's business. So there is a ton of great stuff. If you still need to catch up on Sailors, list of 800 most obscure 80s underrated horror characters or whatever, that list is still up. Be a lot of stuff still up from Bobtober, from Bob and from others. So as always, there is great stuff on the website. We will be back next week, like we said, to talk the Two Towers. RJ will be back, so that will be super fun. And I believe Ramona will be joining us. So should be another great conversation. I'm very pumped for it. RJ is very pumped for it. You're all very pumped for it. We hope to see you there. And as always, in the meantime, we will see you all in the wasteland.